Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called A Moment to Failure, written by I Am the Hype TFS. Humans are cruel and callous. They have carved paths of destruction along the fabric of their history, and they have erased entire species and civilizations from their own planet and the galaxy at large. They are dangerous and impulsive. They give too easily into their baser instincts that tell them to hate and scorn and kill. And they know it as well. Countless are the times I've heard members of their species lamenting the things that they have done or the thoughts in their own heads. How many days, monuments, and buildings are dedicated to never forgetting the tragedy brought upon them by their own kind. And how often have I heard them paradoxically speaking of the human race with equal parts pride and utter disdain. Yet I cannot think of a race that I admire more, not because of their military prowess or power, which are certainly impressive, not because of their economic might and savvy, which has earned them great wealth. No, it is because of their faults. It is because I've never seen a race so deeply affected by their own failures that they embed them into their collective psyche, so that they can never forget what they have done. It goes beyond simply making a date in the history and leaving it for those who come next to find in their own time. Because it would be too easy to focus on their incredible successes and achievements, to let it blind them to their darker natures. So instead of carrying it with them, each individual wrong and slight committed by them and theirs. Because if they forget, they'll do it again. And that drives them. It drives them to greatness. It drives them forward. But most importantly, it drives them beyond themselves. How many times have I seen a human break down and openly weep for the suffering of others? Not just other sapient species, but creatures great and small as well. How many times have I seen them put themselves in danger of being directly harmed by those they desire to help? How many times have they been harmed and continued on anyway because it was simply the right thing to do, or blamed themselves for failing in their efforts, even though the situation was never their responsibility to begin with? I've watched as the human race turned its creative, borderline illogical methods towards the assistance of others, to help in ways that the rest of us couldn't have possibly imagined. I've seen them bend and break what I consider to be the immutable laws of our universe as side effects of their efforts to help others. I've watched them turn technologies of war and destruction to the purposes of peace and prosperity. And I have witnessed them fail in these endeavors over and over, and treat seemingly insurmountable walls as merely stumbling blocks on the road to success, marching forward even as they shout and scream in frustration because they refuse to let it beat them. They fail and fail until they finally succeed, and though there are spontaneous exclamations of surprise and relief when the feat is finally accomplished, it is always the humans who recover the fastest, because deep down they always knew that they would win. They would use each and every failure to build themselves a path to victory. So while we let ourselves be consumed with the impossibility of success, they turn their attention to the next impossible task. They persevere even when the rest of us would have long since given up, because they treat failure as an adversary that will never truly be defeated, and a companion that pushes them beyond their limits. It is their friend, their enemy. Perfection exists in the human vocabulary, but it is a word that will never describe them, and one they would be offended to have attributed to them. They are their failures. Every bloody, painful step upon their road thus far has been taken bearing the ever-increasing load of failures on their backs. And yet, they press on. Their pace may be slow at times, but their progress is inevitable because they have abandoned the thought of perfection. Perfection means there is an end, a point at which there can be nothing better, and humanity has rejected this assessment. No matter how much they improve themselves, there is always room to be better. Not stronger, not superior, better. I have seen them reach the absolute pinnacle of understanding in areas of science only to turn around and try to forcefully break their own conclusions because they don't believe the answer is that simple, even if that answer is the result of an infinitely complex work. And I cannot count the times that they have proven themselves right and gleefully gone back to the drawing board because the new piece of knowledge they obtained has rendered their previous work moot. Never have I seen a race more eager to prove themselves wrong to themselves and gloat about it when they do. How many cries of celebration have I heard upon the discovery of something that has rendered a life's work irrelevant? Not because they enjoy suffering or because they take some kind of pleasure in turning years of work into wasted effort, but because it means that there is more to know, more to learn, more to it all. I pray there never comes a day when humanity finally decides that it is satisfied with itself, that they continue to defy all logic and reason and look beyond the bounds of reality and possibility to the things beyond their understanding. Because the day that happens will be the day when the greatest example of what failure can lead to will crumble and fall. But I suspect I have no cause to fear, for the failures of humankind ever drive them endlessly onward. Yes, I think instead it'll only grow larger and impressive in its magnitude. This glorious monument to failure and what it can achieve. This race called humanity. End of story. Story number 2, and the award goes to, written by Echoing Cascade. Sari and Kari, purple bipedal Horus scientists, were seated next to John Dawson in the cafeteria of the Darwin Research Station. Sari:
Okay, but why would you murder your own grandfather?
Kari: It is just the name of the paradox. You don't actually have to kill your grandfather. It's just a way to easily visualize the causality issue.
I guess.
John became pensive for a second. John: We could always try. Never much like the old fart. The human then jogged out of the room.
I'm afraid to ask, but what did he mean?
Kari took a sip of the green beverage in his cup.
Well, he's either off to enter the specifics on the computer, run a simulation, and see what happens.
Several audio alarms began to scream while the whole station shook.
Or he went into the prototype chrono displacer to travel back in time to kill his own grandfather.
Kari barely managed to have noticed the cacophony going on while Sari was on the edge of panic. John entered the cafeteria in a dead run. Yes! Some of his body parts were fading in and out of existence, and everything he touched seemed to either age uncontrollably or change shapes randomly. I need help. I think I fracked up. Kari, still perfectly calm, raised a single eyebrow. You think? The lights began to flicker until they went out altogether, and then a man appeared next to John. He was tall, wearing a black cloak, held a scythe in his hands, and he was terminally skinny. He pointed a finger at John and then at the seat Sari and Kari's table. John sat down post-haste. Death grabbed his scythe in both hands and slammed the hilt on the ground. The lights returned to normal, the station stopped shaking, and John regained solid form. John was about to say something when Death forestalled him with a raised hand. He then picked the data slate from the table, which transformed into an old-school newspaper, rolled it, and hit John on the nose. Bad human! No! Having admonished the reckless idiot, he began to fade away. Kari: Thanks, Gary. Death nodded before he finally disappeared. I'm gonna call it a night. I have a report to write. He then left, looking depressed and tired. Sari was hyperventilating, sweating, and having a heart attack, though the last one might have just been a panic attack. He wasn't sure.
What? Who? The frick?
That was Gary. He shows up when it's easier to fix a problem before it destroys the universe. He's a nice guy. Sari looked at Kari like a dying man in the desert looks at a cold beer. You are new here, so let me explain. This is the Darwin Research Station, where we do science that is considered too dangerous even by human standards. Death shows up from time to time to either stop shit getting out of hand or to hand out Darwin Awards in person. Sari looked puzzled. Kari made a dismissive motion with his hand. Not the kind of award that you are thinking of. I will explain later. But that was death. How can you be so calm? Kari sighed. Last month, someone had the brilliant idea to put an artificial black hole inside of a hadron collider. Do you know what happens when you do that? Sari shook his head. Nobody does. The test was about to start when we noticed Gary sitting next to us in the lab, wearing sunglasses and, eating popcorn. Oh, we cancelled the experiment. Sari had started to breathe normally now. So that was, normal? Kari got up from his seat and patted Sari on the shoulder. You will get used to it. For most people, narrowly avoiding causality unraveling is an event that will go down in history. Around these parts, we call that a Tuesday. Have a good night. Night. End of story.